What's up, guys? We are back with James Larson, and he's going to be talking about the new Monoprice Monolith Encore T6 loudspeakers. What a mouthful that is, man. That title of that loudspeaker is probably larger than the loudspeaker itself, but it's
Yeah.
got a lot of names. How's
Yeah,
it
it's
going, James?
going good. Yeah, there's a lot going on with the naming like scheme of this product. So it's a lot. I just call it the Encore T6.
You know what I think is going to happen with Monoprice? It's going to be similar to what Hyundai did with Genesis. They're eventually just going to call it Monolith and drop the Monoprice name just because it's a more prestigious name anyways, and it's a higher end series. You know, when you go and buy a Genesis now, it doesn't say Hyundai anymore. So I think eventually we're going to see the same thing happen with Monolith, and people are not going to be referring to it as Monoprice. That's my take on that.
Maybe. Maybe. I don't think Monoprice quite has the marketing budget, to spend millions of dollars on just thinking of names, right? That sell cars, right? Because Monoprice is probably just kind of winging it.
Yeah,
I
well,
I
I
think
mean,
I think they'll actually do that, but maybe.
yeah, I'm just referring to them going forward as Monolith
To like
Encore
I
T6s.
can see car brands doing that, but I don't see. I guess you could kind of, because
You do.
really
You
like
have Revel instead of
Revel's basically
yeah,
like an
yeah.
infinity type Harman speakers. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I think Monoprice probably wants to use Monolith to like elevate itself, and so they wouldn't want to like break it apart, right? They want
Well,
to.
we'll leave that for next time when I have Hobie on, and I'll talk to him about that and see what he
Yeah.
says about it. But anyways, you just finished your review of the T6, the Encore T6 towers. It's on audioholics.com. If you guys have not read the review yet, I'll put a link in the description down below. Lots of good measurements, lots of good comments, lots of subjective as well as objective analysis that James Larson has done on this review on this product. But it's always good to have a live discussion to keep things into perspective. I looked at the review and I was like, that's a lot of speaker for the money, especially now with everything inflated with prices, with the supply chain and inflation. The fact that you're getting nearly a full range tower with really good output and good measurements, and it's under $1,000 a pair, and they don't look that ugly. Like, they don't look cheap. They have a nice fit and finish to them. But I'll let you talk more about that because you're the one that has that speaker right next to you. In fact, let me show a larger image of you so you can see the speaker, and then we'll go over the PowerPoint. Why don't you kind of be the Vanna White for a second and just point to the speaker and tell us a little bit about it?
Well, there it is. I mean, there's not much to tell you. It's the Encore T6 behind me. I think it looks pretty good for the price. I mean, it does not look really luxurious, but it's not an eyesore either. It's like the drivers look cool. There's these trim rings around them that hide the screws, so that's kind of a nice touch. It looks nice, and I think, do I have the grill around? Yeah, and the grill kind of hides it. Like, I think it looks better without the grill, like a lot of speakers do, but see the grill, I don't know. There's
Yeah,
just like a
well,
black thing with the grill.
you can't really see it in the video, but the top of the speaker has kind of like a glossy panel on it, if you
Yeah, it's
will,
like a
right?
gloss black top and also bottom. That's weird, right? It has the same kind of gloss, like a gloss black. I don't want to call it piano black, but it's a black gloss piece on the top and bottom. Like,
Right.
it's at the bottom too, which is weird, but I guess they wanted the symmetry. Somebody at Monoprice really needs, symmetry, right? So it looks nice. It looks nice for the price.
I think what really stands out when you look at that speaker is the giant waveguide on the tweeter. I mean, you don't usually see that in a budget product like this. I mean, we've seen this on a more expensive speakers like a Rendell Sound, for example, have a very similar waveguide.
Yeah, I actually have a waveguide right here. It's like this is the waveguide right here. And
Oh, okay.
it's a spherical waveguide. We'll get into that when we actually discuss the design of the speaker, but
Yeah.
I just have one handy. Yeah, no, it's a lot of speaker for the money, but we'll get into that, when you get into the gory details.
Okay, so we got a comment here before we get into the slide presentation. Really enjoyed that. Nice measurements, fair options, opinions on budget models. Hits way above the dollars for sure. And T6 are pretty sweet. James in the house.
Yes, I am in my house. Yes.
He's in the house. Can confirm the T6 towers are really great. Yeah, so we got. I've been receiving a lot of positive feedback about your review from fellow owners that said they really enjoy the speaker. So looks like there's a lot of people in agreement with you, James. And what I'm going to do now is share the screen.
Okay. Sure. All right. Well, like the title says, these are the speakers in more of their full glory. The Encore T6 tower speakers. This review is kind of delayed. Actually, I measured. I measured these back in November, and I had to remeasure them. And like, but I couldn't because winter set in. It has been a really kind of harsh winter over here,
Yeah.
and I couldn't take them out for like 2 or 3 months. And so now, like I think 3 weeks ago, I was able to measure them again, and so that put a huge delay on the review. So this review is supposed to be done like months ago. Finally, it's done, and everything checks out. The measurements were good, so like yeah, the review is published. Go read it if you want to get into really nitty gritty. But yeah, you can go to the next slide.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up is they have like little outriggers from what I'm seeing, right? They have little outriggers on the bottom.
Yeah, they're outriggers. I mean, they have to have them because they need to be balanced, right? You couldn't even sell them in Europe. Yeah, Europe has some like law about the speakers not being able to tip over easily, so you have to have a certain amount of I don't know how they do it, but they have a regulation for outriggers on tall tower speakers. So they don't fall down on some kid or something.
Yeah, you don't want that. And
But
they're pretty big. I mean, they're 40 inches by 8 by 14-ish.
yeah, these are big speaker. Well, not huge. Okay, I've got these propped up behind me, right? So it looks a little bigger than.
Yeah.
I got these propped up maybe by a foot and a few inches, right? So they aren't this big, right? But they're pretty big for $400 tower speakers. They're pretty sizable speakers.
Yeah. So let's go over the design of it. It looks like there's 3 6.5-inch woofers. One of them is a dedicated mid, but it also plays bass as well, right? Whereas the other two
So
are
you
just
really
bass.
couldn't say it's a dedicated mid.
Yeah, it's not dedicated. It's a 2.5 way.
It's a 2.5 way speaker. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a 2.5 way speaker. So the mid-range driver, this upper mid-range driver plays well, the mid-range and the bass, whereas these two lower 6.5-inch woofers play just the bass. They're all the same except the way the bands have been divided. And so like you can see there, what's I found is interesting is the crossover points. So the two lower 6.5s only play up to 180 hertz, but they have a first order, low pass filter.
Right.
And the mid has a second order low pass filter at 1.35 kilohertz. That's a really low, frequency for the tweeter to be diving in. I mean, 1.35 kilohertz. The tweeter is has a third order high pass filter at 1.35 kilohertz. That's so this is a 1-inch dome tweeter. It is loaded in a waveguide to be sure, but still, that's really low for just a 1-inch dome tweeter. But it works. I mean, it's
well, I mean, part of it, the waveguide actually helps kind of give you more sensitivity at the lower frequencies, right? I mean, without that wave,
it does by helping the acoustic impedance of the speaker. But even so, for just a 1-inch dome tweeter, that's still very low. But it's got to be a heck of a tweeter to be able to withstand that sort of.
It's got to have like a resonant frequency of probably 600 hertz or something like that.
Yeah, it's a tough tweeter, and it's got to have like a low resonant frequency, but it does have a third order high pass filter. So yeah, and they're not too heavy, but they're 50 pounds a piece. These speakers, they're pretty tough. They're like solid. They're solid for the money. They're like.
So one interesting thing when you said it has a third order high pass on the tweeter. Typically, when you get budget speakers like this, they don't give you a lot of crossover parts in it because that costs money. So I've seen budget speakers that only have first order crossovers on the tweeter or just like a capacitor in series with the tweeter. So the fact that they're actually putting a real crossover on the speaker is impressive.
It's impressive. It might be. Sometimes I've seen companies combine the acoustic, like a natural acoustic slope of the driver with the electrical, filter, right? I don't know if they do that here. Nonetheless, that's a pretty steep slope, and like it could be like a second order electrical combined with like maybe a first order acoustical, right? So they don't
Yeah.
need as many components for the high pass filter. So I don't know, but it's pretty good. I mean, that third order, regardless, is pretty good for this price point for sure.
So the sensitivity is pretty good, and actually you measured maybe a half dB more sensitivity than the spec, which is unusual. Usually when companies tell you the sensitivity of a speaker, it's usually a little less or right on the money, but you actually measured a little higher, right?
I measured more than a half dB. I don't remember. I think it's like a 1.5, maybe even 2 dB higher, which is a lot.
Oh, that
But
is
like
good. Yeah.
but sensitivity can change depending on how it's measured exactly, right? So
Yeah.
it's one of those things that and it depends on like the precision and the method, right? There's different methods and ways to measure that, and like I don't know. It could
Well,
be
and I
fun.
assume that they follow and you follow the IEC standard from 300 hertz to 3 kilohertz, and that's kind of where you spec the sensitivity, unlike other brands, Klipsch, that
Clips.
measures at eighth space and gives you like a 6 dB advantage.
Yeah, I don't. They're not playing those sort of games. I assume what they're doing is anechoic.
Yeah.
So like I do it anechoic too. Well, I measure in half space, and then I kind of like translate that into like full space by just knocking off 6 dB. So like yeah, I don't know what they do, but we didn't get exact measurements for the sensitivity. Sometimes I get matching sensitivity measurements with some manufacturers, and other times I get a little bit less or a little bit higher, but usually it's roughly the same.
Well, it's good that you measured more. And these are 4 ohm speakers for anyone that's wondering, but you'll talk later a bit about how the impedance looks, and the fact that they're moderately sensitive speakers means that they'll work pretty well with any range of receivers.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about the receiver too much or the power. Anyways, okay, going on with the slideshow. One thing that impressed me is like, okay, $400 per speaker. That is really good. The best packing I've ever seen for a speaker at this price point is got like, there's a lot of speakers I get which are quite a bit more expensive that just have styrofoam. This is polyethylene, right? This is
Yeah.
like almost a full polyethylene sandwich. This is
Wow.
really good packing, right? So they must have spent a significant amount of money just on the packaging. But like,
Yeah.
you can't buy these at a store. They have to be shipped. So the packing has to be good. So
Right.
they really did a good job with that. And that matters. That actually matters. So I actually, I weigh that in the whole review. And
Yeah. So, I mean, they just don't want to have a lot of returns from damaged shipping, which is happening a lot lately. We've been seeing a lot of damaged products that we've been getting. I don't know if it's COVID thing or what's going on lately, but
I don't know, but you don't have to worry about these because these are like, that's like almost overkill in packing. But I guess you can't really have overkill as rough as the shipping can be sometimes.
yeah.
So that's, yeah. Also, if you go back to the slide, there you can see that like DVD on top. You can see how reflective that top is. With the
Right.
that's to kind of demonstrate how the gloss that the top, the way it's kind of like but the other pictures don't really capture it that well, but this one does. So
I
yeah,
mean, it's nice to even have a classy finish on the speaker at all on the top of it for this price. So I think it works really well with
it's a
that
nice
product.
touch. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. You can go to the next slide. There's the speakers with and without grills. They're nice looking. They're not like super nice looking, right? But given the price, I think they're pretty darn good. Just like
Yeah.
they're not eyesores. Okay, here's
That's a
some,
pretty big port, and it's flared too. It was a 3.5-inch port.
that's a huge port. I don't I don't remember what I measured it. I don't remember. I think it's like 11 inches deep. I think 3.5 in diameter. I'm not
Yeah, it looks
100%
at
sure.
least 3.5, and
It's
it's
a big,
flared. It's flared too.
yeah, double flared. I mean, it's a bigger port than you see on a lot of
Hmm.
subwoofers.
Hmm.
So this thing has serious bass. I mean, it has a big cabinet. It's a big port. So like that's how it's getting so much bass. I mean, and deep bass. This is a deeply tuned speaker, um, especially for the price. It's
Is
like
this bi-ampable and bi-wireable, or is it just bi-wireable?
I believe it's bi-ampable. It's
Wow.
bi-ampable. You
It's
can
funny because we reviewed like Focal Canta N2s, which are 11,000 a pair, and you can only single connect them. And here we are with an $800 budget speaker, and you could bi-amp them. That's pretty funny.
there might be some design decision where Falcao decided he shouldn't be able to do that. They might have had some reasoning for that. They could easily do that when it cost them almost nothing. So they might have a rationale for that design
Yeah.
decision.
Well, I mean, typically if you buy amp, you got to separate the crossover boards and there's more expense on it. But the fact that they're even offering that here is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's neat. I would, you shouldn't buy amp these, but you can, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
why, right? I mean, if it was a more expensive speaker, or if a speaker in this class, it doesn't really merit
You're
this sort of.
telling me you're not going to use a $10,000 Macintosh amplifier with these speakers because they're cheap? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm telling you that if you did that, that would be pretty cool. I mean, it would be cool, but I mean, the speaker doesn't really. It can handle more power than what an AVR, a normal AVR, can like give.
See this, James? This is exactly what I was thinking, because I've been
No.
noticing we've been getting bad luck with packages coming for review with getting damaged, and this guy here works for FedEx. He basically confirmed my suspicions. So Monoprice must realize this, and they armed themselves.
Yeah, all these smart companies will. If you see, okay, the companies who are really concerned about the shape that their product is going to be like arriving in, they're going to use polyethylene foam, not styrofoam.
Yeah,
Styrofoam it shatters. It shatters. So like, that's where you can see where somebody did their job. But again, polyethylene costs a lot more than styrofoam, so you have to
yeah,
make those trade-offs. Yeah. So like, I mean, so going back to the slideshow on the left hand of the graph, you can see there's two window braces on the speaker. It has MDF. It's pretty solid enclosure, like we said before, right?
yeah.
You're getting a good, and those are metal outriggers. Those are full metal outriggers. You can use spikes or rubber feet with them. So like, it's a full feature set. This is it's not a cheap tower. It's a cheap tower, but it's not a cheap tower. You know what I'm saying? It's not.
No,
Doesn't
yeah,
not a cheap tower. I don't know how much they're making on this tower, but I don't know. It's weird to see this thing at this low of a price. It's a serious speaker. It's a
yeah.
serious
It
speaker.
really is. I'm impressed what I'm seeing here so far. So let's move on.
If
There we
you,
go with the drivers. They, like you said, they have a ring around them so you don't see the screws. That's really cool.
yeah, that's there's a 6.5 inch bass drivers, and there's your tweeter. That these are just close-ups. I mean, like you can like, I have like I said, I have this thing right here. I'm gonna
Yeah, let
take.
me show here. Let's show that.
Yeah, so like this uses a spherical waveguide. It's like, I mean, if you want to see what the back of it looks like, right? Here's
Right.
like the tweeter motor. Obviously, there's has to be a neodymium in there, right?
Oh, I didn't expect it to have a Neo slug on it.
Most of them do. Honestly, yeah. The price, they all have neodymium. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them do. So like it kind of like could go either way with these speakers. I don't think neodymium is that expensive in such a tiny, little chunk,
No,
right?
it's not, yeah. But
I mean,
the problem with Neo slugs like that, if they don't have a good heat sink on them, is they could compress. Did you hear any of that when you were cranking these up, or did they sound like
no. But then again, these can probably get louder than I can stand. They can get loud. They have real
yeah,
dynamic range. So like they're really good. And in their class, in their price class, they're probably one of the highest dynamic range speakers you can get.
yeah. Well, I'm sure that waveguide plays a really big role in that too.
I think it more plays a role. This is not a really deep horn, right, or deep waveguide. So I think its role is mostly to control dispersion. It does probably make the tweeter a bit more efficient, but it's not the deepest waveguide. So it's not.
Yeah, it's pretty shallow,
I
yeah.
don't think it's doing a whole lot to raise sensitivity or efficiency. Okay.
So what are we doing here? You're putting them outside again, huh?
Yeah, I had to. Thankfully, this thing is only 50 pounds. It's like that's nice. It's a beefy speaker, but 50 pounds isn't too hard to deal with. Yeah, there's like you can see there the pole that measured the speakers are elevated. The mic is at about 7.5 or 8 feet high on the level with the tweeter. So this is and I window out so there's a ground reflection that I can like window out. That means cutting off the time where
Mhm.
the bounce will hit the microphone. So I can get anechoic up to like I think 8 milliseconds with this, which gives me resolution down to 200 hertz. Yeah,
Yep.
this is it. I mean, Dan doesn't want credit.
I know.
He told you this, Gene. He doesn't want credit for anything like except he's not the guy who wants to take credit. But everybody's like, oh,
Yeah,
this is Dan. He's going to becoming better known for all these really good products, right?
yeah.
But he prefers not to like. He's a humble guy. right?
Yeah, he really is. But let's face it, he's one of the smartest engineers doing consumer loudspeakers right now. I'm really impressed with his
Yeah,
work.
he should. I mean, he should be better known. He should get me credit, but he doesn't want it. That's not the way that's not his style. That's not the way he operates. If he had wanted, credit for being like this, like, really accomplished loudspeaker designer, he could have done so a long time ago because he's been doing these really good speakers for a long time.
A
So,
true leader doesn't seek power; they have power thrust upon them.
well, you tell Dan that. I don't know what he'd say to that. He'd probably say it's a little over the top, but okay. I'll be sure to mention that. I'll probably see him at Exponent. I'm going to Exponent next weekend, so I'll.
Oh, you didn't tell me you were going. People have been asking me. I'm like, no, we're not going. But now I didn't know you
Oh,
were going to
well, we
cover it
talked
for
about
him.
it before. I said I was going to cover it for you like a few weeks ago. You probably forgot, but yeah, I mean, I'll
Okay.
probably see him. I think he's going to be there, so I'll see. I'll talk to him there. So you can
Look at
put
this.
in.
This is what I was saying before. Who on earth makes a speaker that's biampable for $400?
Dude, so many people do. It's every okay. Here's the reasoning behind this. Right, a lot of speakers do it. It's not really that right. It's not great, right? Because nobody's going to actually biamp them. But it's like something to
It's
tick
a
off on a
checkpoint.
checkbox. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a checkbox for some set for a criteria that like maybe reviewers or just like a spec sheet, right? But
Overachievers.
yeah, realistically, nobody's gonna. It's just a feature checkbox that nobody uses. That's all.
Yeah, I hear you. All
So
right,
you
let's move.
okay, here's the 3D kind of like view of the dispersion, the frequency response on and off axis, and there's not any really crazy like dips or peaks off axis, which is what you're looking for in this type of graph. So like
Right.
it's nice and smooth, right? There is a little bit, just a tiny bit of waistbanding around, I want to say 2 kilohertz, but really it's just smooth. It's a smooth on and off axis speaker. So it's a good measurement set, right? And like it's nice and like it's a smooth shape, really. I don't know how to put it, but you're looking for a smooth shape and you without a lot of jaggedness or peaks and valleys, right? Like dips, and like this gives you that, except for the high end, for the upper treble where it doesn't really matter, like 20 kilohertz, who cares, right?
I haven't heard 20 kilohertz in probably over 10 years, so that's fine with me.
Yeah, it's the range that counts. It works. It's a good measurement set. So you can go to the next one, which shows you the same thing on a 2D graph, and
Yep.
this gives you a better look at like individual responses. So this is out to 90 degrees, of course. The on-axis response will be the highest in this, and you can see there's a bit of a elevated area. I think that's from like 3 kilohertz to maybe 6, right? That'll
Right.
that will give this speaker, I guess, compared to a speaker that's neutral, that's probably the biggest area of coloration of the tonality of the speaker, and that might.
It's not a bad thing though. It just gives you a little bit more of a forward mid-range. You could probably get a really strong like phantom center when you get them imaging properly, you know?
Yeah, it'll pick up like maybe the upper harmonics of human vocals or some instruments and make it sound maybe a little bit bright, a little bit forward, but actually in my listening, I didn't notice that, but I don't think I had these aimed straight at me. So like if you angle it, that kind of like that won't be as present, right? But if you like a little bit more forward, like tonality, aim these right, facing you. But if you don't, maybe listen at like a 20-degree angle or something like that.
So you're not recommending toe in on these, or you're recommending
I would say it's a matter of preference. If you want a little bit brighter, a little bit more forward of speaker, toe them in to face you, to have them facing directly at you. But if you don't want that quality,
yeah.
then just don't do that. Have them facing outward, right, or something like that. So like it's a flaw, but you're not going to get perfection at. And I don't say that's flaw. It's a matter of preference. It's not even a flaw.
Dude,
It's a matter of
the
preference.
fact that you're pulling these kind of measurements on a tower that's $800 a
It's
pair.
really good. And look
Yeah.
at all the off-axis responses. Really nice, smooth,
They're
linear.
predicted. Yeah, exactly.
It's so good. This is so good for the price. This is really good for $800 per. All right, here's like a kind of above view, like a top-down view of those same graphs, right? But to
Yeah.
show you what's going on in color, and you can kind of see the overall trends better with this. So it's like it's nicely controlled directivity from like, I want to say 1,000 hertz all the way up to 10,000 hertz. There is some waistbanding, like I said, it's so narrow. So like high Q, the waistbanding that's occurring at like 3, you're not going to, it's inaudible. It's nothing, right? So, and there you can see that kind of rise in the response of that dark red patch, right? And what is that, like 3 kilohertz to like 6 kilohertz is there, but it's relatively mild. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
A couple dB, right? So it's not a big problem, but you would hear that if you A/B'd these against a perfectly neutral speaker, but these sound pretty darn good, right? It's like, is any other speaker in this price class going to like be better? No, right? No, this is really good, you know.
Yeah.
This is like this is really cool. Here's the bass response. You know, I do this on a ground plane to get this response. And like a lot of these tower speakers, it has like a kind of damped ported response, which the port isn't quite as high in level as the woofers. You know, because if they were, you'd have a boomy bass in room, right? You don't
Yeah.
want a flat response, and almost every single tower speaker manufacturer has a sort of sloping response to the port tuning frequency, you know, just so that the speaker doesn't bloat the bass. But note the port like resonance, right? It's like just above 20 hertz. So
Mhm.
people say, you know, there were some comments about these speakers. I say in the review that it's basically a full range tower speaker, and some people have commented that it's not full range for real. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. Yeah. What is this missing, right? It's tuned to you're gonna have like a 20 hertz response in room with these speakers, okay?
Mhm.
Like what are you missing at below 20 hertz, right? That's a full range speaker. You don't need subs with these speakers, right? 20 hertz. Okay, this is digging down to 20 hertz solid. So like it's a full range speaker for the pricing. It's crazy, right? And the bass is powerful too. You know, thanks to that gigantic port.
Yeah, you even mentioned in the review that if you're a budget-minded person and you don't have floor space and you don't have the budget to add a sub, you could run these full range on a receiver and get satisfactory bass for most program material, including movies.
Yeah, anything. I think
It's not going to shake your house, obviously, when we're bassaholics and we're running dual 12s or 18s, but
yeah, it's not quite like that, but I would say if you don't want a sub, right, or if you don't have the room for a sub, these are a very good alternative. Or very good. And the people who are shopping this price range, they're not buying a really expensive sub anyway, right?
mm,
But like this is a really good substitute for a subwoofer. I don't need. I was listening to these things, right? You don't need a sub for like music. Most
yeah.
music, right? You don't need subs. On a lot of movies, this did really good. Like this did justice to a lot of movies without a sub, right? So like a lot of people should be looking at these, in my opinion, as a speaker that lets you get away without needing a sub. You know, like that's a really big, huge bonus with these. Okay, I took these. I can't do the full suite of verticals, right? I can only do a kind of a narrow range, you know, because of the way I measure things, right? But I still do them to see what's going on off axis and where do you really want to listen to them. The best angle to listen to these at is 0 degrees, which is where the tweeter would be level with your ears, right?
Mhm.
And if you go up by 10 degrees, the response still holds pretty good. Also, the 5 degree, like up by 5 degrees was so similar to the 0 degrees, I didn't even include it. It's the same. It's not changing, right? So like negative 5 degrees, the response is still holds, but it's getting a little bit of a roller coaster there, right? A little bit of a, but if you go lower than like 10 degrees, you start is it a crossover dip? Like it must be, but the dip, you get this
I
dip in
mean,
the
that
bass.
happens with most speakers. When you get more than 20 degrees off axis, you're gonna get a dip at the crossover
But
range,
this does happen at 10 degrees. So like you want to be listening to these about tweeter a bit above, but I wouldn't want to be listening to these speakers like at a lower height. So if you have low slung seating, right, these might not be the best because if you're sitting relatively close to them, right, if you're
Yeah,
sitting
yeah,
at distance, you're going to be within 5 degrees, so it's fine, right? But
yeah.
if you're close and you're seated low, there's better speakers. But these do pretty good, you know, especially at like ear level, you know,
So
and maybe.
we have a user that owns these, and he says he tilted them up 5 degrees past his ear.
I would probably like, you know, if you like that you might just prefer that voicing that it gives it, but it is taking a chunk out of the mid range. So you know, you might want to not do that. You might want to try with just like, if it were me, I would
Well,
tip them down a little bit so that like maybe tip them down a little bit at a 5-degree angle. Not that,
well, interestingly enough, you did measure like a bump in the 2 to 3 kilohertz area anyway, so maybe he prefers that because it's more neutral.
no, the bump would have been from at 3 to
3 to
6.
6?
Yeah, so that bump would
Oh,
be
okay.
accentuated at that
Yeah,
point. So like,
yeah, I
but
gotcha.
these are all on axis, so that's the bump is right there. It's in all of these. So like, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't aim them back, but maybe you kind of like that like recessed mid range if you like that. I would probably have them just aiming right at my ears. You know.
Well, you guys could experiment, obviously. We show you the measurements and you guys make your decisions there. So
Sure.
we're looking now at the impedance and phase of the speaker. And one thing I like about it is they didn't lie and say these were 8 ohm speakers, because obviously they don't meet the IEC standard of being 80% of 8 ohms. You know, they're obviously more like 5 ohms for most of the frequency range, which is definitely a 4 ohm speaker. But I mean, there's nothing crazy going on. Even at low frequencies, it's not dipping much below, 4 ohms.
Yeah, it's a 4 ohm speaker, but it's not it's not like a harsh load where something is going crazy somewhere. It's a very typical response for this type of speaker. I don't like some people say, oh, you're going to need a separate amp for these. I don't think so. No, your AVR will drive them just fine. If you have like a really low budget AVR and you're trying to drive like a 7-channel sound system at full blast, yeah, these aren't, you're not going to want speakers with this sort of impedance load on that. But even like a cheap like amp, like and maybe an entry level AVR could drive these just fine if you only have 2 of them, you know, and you're not trying
Mhm.
to drive 7 speakers with a sort of load, you know. So I think it's not hard. It's not the most benign electrical load, but it's not
Yeah, at 80
really harsh.
hertz, the phase change is a little bit steeper than usual, but
Yeah, well, I think one of the things to note with this graph is so the saddle and the low frequencies, you know, how they have that saddle shape. And this, it's not even a saddle shape because
yeah, they're asymmetric.
yeah, they're very asymmetric, which means that I think that means that the tuning frequency of the enclosure is considerably lower than the resonant frequency of the drivers. But where
Yeah.
you see the dip in that kind of saddle where there's that low peak and the high peak and the low frequencies, the bottom of that dip is kind of the tuning frequency, and you can see this is tuned to lower than 30 hertz. So like it's it's a full range speaker, you know. I would
Mhm.
say 30 hertz, it's full range. If you've got 30 hertz, it's full range. You know, it's a lot of people say no, you have to be 20 to cover the entire spectrum of human hearing. But like, what content is there below 20 hertz? At least not in movies, right?
I think Don Dunn will disagree with you because he likes goosing the bass up on everything, and he plays electronic music that some of that stuff dips below probably close to 20. But
I think I mean I've done a lot of like spectrographs of music, and even like a lot of heavy duty like dubstep and electronic music. It
yeah.
doesn't even go below 40 hertz. I think what a lot of people think is deep bass is like 40 hertz.
Yeah, that's where you really feel it, the 40 to 50 hertz range more than the below 20 hertz.
Like 20 hertz is not even a visceral feeling if you ask me. It's not. It's
Yeah.
like it's something you can sense, but it's not like that punch you in the chest. It's not like a roller coaster sensation. You know, that really visceral sensation. It's not 20 hertz. 20 hertz is like it's almost like I don't know how should I say it? It's what's
If
the word?
you could get a speaker that could accurately reproduce 20 hertz or below at meaningful SPL, and you have a floor that is not concrete. Like in my old house, my theater room was on the second floor, and I could literally feel my spinal column shake, and I could feel the rafter shake. I can't feel that in my new house with my new theater room because it's concrete, and I don't get that tactile feel through the floor like I used to. But
Yeah, 20 hertz is not a tactile frequency, honestly. It's
yeah,
not. You'd have to have it extremely loud. I think where it really becomes tactile when it assists or abets like the mid bass region. When it comes with that mid bass and upper bass stuff, right?
yeah.
Then it gives you the whole thing gives you a lot more punch, and you do hear that in music and movies, mostly movies for 20 hertz. But it's not. Yeah, it's not really on its own. It's almost like phantasmic. You know, it's like
Mhm.
it's just it's hard to sense. You know, it's like it's not really that discernible. So like that's just my little spiel about that.
Yeah,
Anyways,
well,
yeah,
This looks good. It looks like a good impedance curve. Like you said, it'll work with pretty much any AVR, but don't be afraid to use, a good amplifier on these speakers. They could certainly handle it.
Yeah, they could take 200 watts, and no AVR is going to give you 200 watts. So like, yeah, at least per channel, at least a mid level or entry level AVR is not going to be 200 watts per channel at 2 channels.
Yeah.
So like, okay, the pros and cons. All right, like it's a extremely wide dynamic range for this price point. Like they can pound. These speakers can really belt it out. The bass extension, as we were just going on and on about, one of the high points of the speaker. $400 speakers, you don't need to sub with them, and they really dig deep. There's a lot of speakers way more expensive these that don't dig as deep. A lot of tower speakers, and like pretty even no tonality, not perfect, but really good, especially for the price. Like I said, nice aesthetic flourishes, those top and bottom pieces. The finish is fine. It's the kind of a normal black oak. We see this in a lot of speakers, that kind of like, I mean, sure, it's not real, but it's like that black oak final finish on so many speakers, even much more and less expensive speakers. It's very common, but it doesn't look bad. Like I said, unexpectedly good packing for the cost. Packing is excellent.
Yeah.
And the one con was you don't want to listen to that at a low angle like this. I guess that one guy found them, was happy with them at a low angle, so maybe that's not such a con after all. I don't know.
Yeah, well, everybody's got different preferences, obviously. I mean, it's good to have perspective here. So what I notice on budget speakers, typically when they tune them low to get bass, like you're talking about, probably smaller speakers than these that don't have 3 woofers like that, is when a company tunes a speaker low and the woofer can't handle it, it'll bottom out, it'll stress. Did you have any of those kind of problems when you were playing bass intense music at, moderately loud listening levels? Did you find like the woofers are stressing? Did you ever get them to bottom out, or were they well damped and well,
I didn't.
controlled?
I might need an. I didn't. I didn't try though. They're like, I listen to loud, like even like movies and music, like even stuff that digs deep. I
Mhm.
listen to it loud and I never noticed any problems. Of course, I wasn't using a subwoofer or any of the other speakers, so like they handled it just fine. I'm not saying that couldn't happen, but I wasn't able to make it happen, and I listened louder than what most people would normally listen them to. So like,
Yeah.
it's not. I don't think it's something you have to worry about with these. So like, they're just really good speakers for the price.
So these are their flagship right now, the T6s.
Not the flagship. Well, the flagship would be the Monolith THX.
Well, I mean on the Encore series.
Oh yes, the Encore series.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are the flagship.
So do they have I know they have a bookshelf that has just the 6.5 and the tweeter. Do they have a dedicated center channel, or is it just like an MTM?
It's just an MTM, and like, so you would, the center channel is MTM. How are you going to get a 3-way? One thing you could do with the center channel for this, if you didn't want to use a normal MTM, is like
Use the bookshelf.
just use a bookshelf, or you could use an MTM, but have maybe a 3-way MTM or a 2.5-way MTM, and just with the same crossover frequencies as this is, that you wouldn't have that lobing. You wouldn't have that lobing.
I don't like 2.5-way MTMs. I've heard them before. I've heard companies use that topology, and I never liked them. I'd rather just have the MTM and don't sit more than 20 degrees off axis.
A lot of those MTMs can't even get to 20 degrees before the lobing starts knocking off the, so I don't know. I think that's an interesting idea. I haven't had one, but I think that's one way to solve that problem. But you would have other types of lobing, but it wouldn't be as bad as what an MTM would give you, I would think,
Well, the interesting thing about these speakers the way I see it is I wouldn't even think necessarily about building a home theater around the speaker. I would think about building a 2-channel system, whether it's in a college dorm or if it's just a spare room or something like that. Because James said these play full range and they have lots of output. You don't need a subwoofer. You pair these with like a good integrated amp, like a Yamaha. I see people talking about the 801, which I love that receiver. You pair that with that amplifier and get a good streaming service like Tidal or Apple Music or whatever, and you could have some magic for pennies on the dollar, especially this day and age with everything going up in price. You could have a really good sounding audiophile grade system for under $2,000. with the electronics and the speakers. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you could do that. You don't need, like we keep on repeating, you don't need a subwoofer. That saves not just money, it saves floor space, and it saves the hassle of having to integrate a sub. And Gene, how many people can really integrate a sub
Yeah.
well, right?
Yep.
Not too many, honestly, right? This just saves you that effort, the hassle, and it's a better solution for a lot more people than just adding this up. I think
I like this 2 channel full range for old school Nintendo in a college dorm. Perfect. I love that.
playing some Nintendo on these, like some old school, like 8-bit, like chip tunes, like from an old NES would sound awesome with these,
Yeah.
right? That would sound awesome. That would be a cool sound system. I mean, some old MIDI, like MIDI music from like,
Yep.
computer games, or like those old consoles. That'd be pretty fun.
Not to go off topic, but there's this company that makes the Commodore 64 and the Amiga, and they're a fan of our channel, so they sent me samples of both. I'm going to be doing a video on those pretty
Oh,
soon.
that was cool, man. You gotta hook them up to the SVTRS system. Let her rip, man.
That would be
Probably,
funny, actually.
yeah, that would be cool, man. You gotta hook them to that system. That'll be
I love that era of gaming. I still have a Nintendo Wii that I play with my kids, and I have an Xbox One as well, but I tend to gravitate more towards the simpler time in games when you can actually play the game and you don't need a PhD thesis to figure out the buttons and stuff. But
Yeah, there's like you can just dive in those old games right now. There's like a learning curve for just playing a game. I mean,
Super Punch Out.
yeah, Mike
Hey, I
Tyson's
got pretty
Punch-Out.
far on that one. Yeah.
I got to Mike Tyson. I think I managed to beat him on Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, right?
Yeah.
The old one, right? That was a fun game. I remember that. Yeah.
Yep.
It was hard though. He was hard, Mike, right? If you didn't have anybody to give you the secret recipe to beat him,
Oh, yeah.
the timing was crazy hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. God. Yeah, I've been playing a bunch of the Commodore stuff again. Like my favorite games from that era were like Raid Over Bungling Bay, which is like a helicopter game. Archon. Nobody could beat me at Archon. I have a strategy. I beat the computer in under 5 minutes now, and I'm proud of that. I had Shane from RBH come over because he used to play that too, and I probably beat him in about 6 minutes.
These are just a bit before my time, just a bit. My gaming, like, I don't age was like the NES, right? That's when I played stuff like the Commodore and Atari, but for my family, the first game system was the NES. And that's like kind of like, I guess you go a little bit.
You're a youngin', man. I had my first game system when I was growing up with my brothers is triangle cartridges. They had a steering wheel on one side, they had the paddles, and then a gun. And you put these triangle cartridges in, and you'd play Pong, and you'd play a driving game. Well, all you had to do was just go off to the side of the road, and you would never like lose. You could just drive in the grass. But yeah. Then I got a Coleco as I got older, and I was the coolest kid on the block when everyone else had Atari 2600s. I had a Coleco, which was better than 2600. And then of course Commodore after that.
Yeah, we didn't get into that stuff.
So to keep things into perspective, people are asking, how do these compare? I can't find that comment now. I saw it before. How do these compare to an equivalent Klipsch product, like a reference series product, and the Polk R700s, which a Polk is $2,200 a pair, so they're well over double the price.
Yeah. There's some decent competition. I mean, you're not without competition in this price point. I mean, the R700s are a superior speaker. I mean, there's flatly, right? The Polk, that's just those are punching above their price class, and they're 2,200 a pair. So like, no, these aren't quite on that level, but they're really good. The Klipsch, Klipsch has a speaker, a cheap, like it's a regular reference series speaker with 2 8-inch woofers that measures pretty well.
Not the 8000s that you reviewed, right?
Not the 8000s. Those are probably those would have wider dynamic range than these. Those probably have a little bit of a flatter response, but those wouldn't dig as deep as these though. These probably could keep up not too shabby even in the dynamic range though. These could get pretty loud as you would expect. The Polks also could get. So Polks probably have some decent speakers. I think their reference series are also not bad. They measure better than their pricing suggests. I'm not a big, huge fan of a lot of Polk stuff, but I think some of their lower budget stuff is actually pretty solid for the price. I don't know how these would fare against. I'd have to measure those and listen to them, so I couldn't tell you. But you know what? Another speaker that is the same price as these is that I did spend some time with was the Fluence signature three-way towers. Do you remember those?
Yes.
They're the same price as these, and they're pretty good. Those are pretty good. I would say those are worthwhile competition if you're deciding between an $800 price point. It's these or the Fluence. There's a few others. Emotiva has one called the Air Motive T1 Plus, which is
Uh-huh.
it's a three-way speaker with two 8-inch bass woofers and an AMT. I don't know how that is. Emotiva they can make some really good stuff, but sometimes some of their speakers.
Yeah, it could be pretty hit or miss for
Yeah,
sure.
so
I've
I
seen
don't
it.
know about that one. I would have to like spend some time with it, but those are the same pricing. I think about $800 a pair.
Yeah, and then this KLH has a speaker at this price point, which I haven't checked out, but
I don't know about that one. But looking at there's other speakers like the KLH. Polk Audio has one that's same price, the Elite, Signature Elite, and also ELAC has the Debut that's the same pricing, like $800 a pair. But what this would have over all those is dynamic range. Those are
yeah,
not.
ELACs don't play loud unless you get their upper end models, especially their coax speakers. They have low sensitivity and they just don't have the output of a speaker like this. I'm talking, same price range.
Sure, yeah, like they have a speaker in the same price range, and looking at that design, there's no way that those are going to play as loud as this or as deep as this. So
Yeah.
like they might have slightly more linear response on axis, maybe, but I wouldn't even think off axis too much. The off axis response to these is really, really good. So like these would be one of my top choices. The Fluence I think would be pretty good, but I wouldn't want to use those in a small room. These you could use in a not too large room, and they'll be pretty good.
Hmm.
These would be one of the best to get in the price point, I believe.
So question is, you've reviewed the Monolith THX speakers, and I know it's been a long time, but I mean, are these close in performance to those, or are those just like, because they're double the price?
The mini tower, the MTM type bookshelf speakers, they call them mini towers, but they're just really big bookshelf speakers, right?
Yeah.
Those aren't double the price. Those are like, I think 500 a piece or something
Well, I
like
was
that.
thinking the tower, their
Oh, the
tower.
towers would be double the price. I
Yeah.
haven't heard the towers. I would expect them to perform similarly to the mini towers. Um, is
Did
it
you
worth
review the towers or did you review the mini tower?
the mini towers?
Oh, okay.
I think it depends on the kind of system you're setting up.
Yeah.
Is it worthwhile? If money is if you have to if money is an issue, go with these. Except if you want the center speaker. The center speaker of those being a really good three-way center, it's going to be better than the MTM center that these come
And
with.
that might be a good compromise. Someone goes with these towers and then they go with the Monolith THX center channel because it's a dedicated three-way center channel.
Yeah, and it's like on its own, I think it costs the same. I think it's like a $400 center. So you have a $400 left and right and a $400 center, and it's like, I think the center for these is like $200 to $300, right?
Yeah.
I would get the Monolith, a THX center, if it was me, and yeah, that would be a really killer system, especially for the money. So
Yeah.
that's what I would do. Yeah.
Well, it looks like they hit it out of the park for the price range. It's a solid performer. It's got good bass response, good sensitivity, lots of output. It measures well. It doesn't need a lot of power to sound good. And as long as you stay within the vertical axis of the tweeter, like you were suggesting, you don't want to sit too far below the tweeter. You're in good shape, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's like really, really. Let's just say if I were shopping for tower speakers in this price range, I don't know why I would go anything else. This would probably be my first choice. I like the Fluence, and there are some other offerings that are interesting, but they're just too good, right? They're just too good for the money. So like, I kind of have to go with these, I think. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the kind of the bottom line with these.
Awesome. And we have someone here that I think he's saying he owned. Oh, wait, I hit the wrong one. I've owned the center channel. I'm assuming he means the Monolith THX center channel. It's a good performer right
It is a good
there.
performer, yeah. It is.
How would they timber match?
I don't know. but you know what? It's probably I don't think it's probably an exact match, but it's probably not that far. I mean, it might be okay. I think it'd probably be a passable match. I couldn't tell you.
Well, you got the measurements for
Yeah,
the mini tower, and we've got the measurements here. So if anybody's really serious about combining them, go look at our reviews.
we got the
They're on
measurements
our
for the center
website.
speaker too. They're monolith center speakers, so we got measurements for those. So or you could just try them, man. You can return them. You can
Yeah.
like try it out, buy these if you want a center. Try the monolith center. You can return them, and all you'd be out is like the shipping cost, the return shipping cost. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
give it a
look,
try.
guys, we're in a incredible renaissance, in my opinion, in how loudspeakers have evolved over the last 5 to 10 years. The landscape of the competition, the fact that it's getting harder to get really bad speakers these days, even at this price point, it's pretty awesome. I mean, God, it's rare that you get a lemon these days, James. I mean, you've been getting some good speakers for the most part.
To be fair, the companies that kind of have their head on their shoulders would know enough not to send me speakers that aren't really good, right? So
Yeah.
like, I mean, there might be a lot of lemons out there, but if you know you have a lemon, you're not sending them to Audioholics, right?
Yeah.
So like we have kind of a selectation bias, right? But yeah, we get a lot of good speakers. Wait till you see the speakers that I'm working on 2 reviews now. Wait till you see them. They're both really cool. And like, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but yeah, there's some good speakers coming up. And another one that's pretty budget speaker that's also really good. But no spoilers. That you'll have to wait for those.
Right. Well, I have the Paradigm, the 8000s. They were supposed to send to you, and they accidentally sent to me. And those are, I think they're $800 each. They're huge, huge boxes. I'm going to be unboxing those in the next 30 days and giving some impressions. I probably won't have the ability to do the measurements like you do. I'll just do in-room measurements and give my subjective listening on that. But um, I've been really impressed with the Paradigm Premieres like you have. I've had those in the house for a while. I really enjoy those. And now I have the Paralistons as well. So I mean, it's just we've been getting hit with really good speakers at all price points, and that's exciting to me that we're getting all these great options for you guys to kind of consider depending on your application and your budget. Check out our reviews on audioholics.com. Click on the product reviews, go to loudspeakers for towers or bookshelves, and James is pretty much measuring every speaker he reviews, and he gives you his straight up opinion and the associated strengths and weaknesses of each product to help you guys make a more informed purchasing decision. And James, I appreciate you putting all that effort into taking these outside and measuring them and trying to do these little comparisons whenever you can. Because people at the end of the day don't know what to buy, and they want to get the best value per dollar without having to return things if they can. And I think that you're doing a great job in giving us the knowledge to make educated purchasing decisions.
Well, it's my pleasure. I get to work with all these speakers and listen to them, so I kind of know how things sound based on measurements and how measurements correlate to how things sound. So like it's fun for me.
Oh, hell of those Heikos, by the way. We just gave away a pair of those. We gave away a 5.1 Heiko system last month, and you've got the Heiko towers. How are they? Can you give us a little preview on your initial thoughts?
I don't want to spoil much, but okay, first, how much should I really spoil? Okay, I wasn't expecting.
Thanks for the super chat, Double T.
Thank you, Double T. I wasn't expecting a lot because I never even heard of Heiko,
Yeah,
and so like when I first got the speakers in, everything just screamed like I don't know, like like kind of cheap Chinese, standard issue Chinese manufacturing practices, right? And
right.
I wasn't sure how they would like really pan out, but I was very, very. I don't want to spoil too much, but I was very, very pleasantly surprised with what I got. What they like. I want to say what they kind of hinted at being. It was not what they were at all. Like those are. I don't want to spoil too much, but those are
Yeah.
not bad speakers, and you'll
Well,
see. You'll see.
I figured that much because I'm going to shamelessly plug Audio Advice now. Obviously, they're a channel sponsor, but they're a channel sponsor for a reason. I spent some time talking to them before I took on this partnership with them. these guys are very knowledgeable. Like that guy Nick Rich that I had on our channel on a live stream, and I had him over to listen to my system. A guy that's in his 20s like that and has that kind of home theater knowledge is very impressive to me. And these guys really take their time at educating people like we do. Obviously, they're a store, they sell you a product, but they want to sell you the right product and they don't want to oversell you. And they spoke very highly of the Heikos. So I had to get you those pair as soon as we could. So I'm glad to hear some initial positive feedback on that. Yeah, it's just this is like the year of really good products that you're reviewing speaker wise and not expensive stuff. I'm not throwing you. I mean, there's one speaker I threw you that's pricey, but the majority of the stuff you're reviewing this year is going to be down to earth pricing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually, to be honest, I'm more interested in the lower cost and more accessible stuff than the higher cost stuff. But
Yeah,
the higher cost stuff is fun. It can be really fun at times. I have like the Heikos I have. They're only $800 each, not a pair, but that's a not a bad price. And I also have those Sigberg audio speakers. Those are like over
those are
7,000
pricey.
a pair. Yeah, and they're
Yeah,
both outstanding speakers, and I really like them both. So like it's all good.
awesome. All right. Well, James, again, I appreciate it. Guys, don't forget we have a contest going on right now. You could win a brand new Denon AVR X 3700H AV receiver. I'll put a link to the contest down below. That's running until mid next month. Just to make sure you guys understand that you will not be contacted on our YouTube channel if you won this contest. There's a scammer that goes around trying to tell people they have to pay the shipping. That's not us. You're only going to get an email directly from us or a phone call from us through our email address, and you will never pay a dime for a winning on a contest from us. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. And don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to us if you want to suggest video topics or you just want to get some questions answered. And James, again, we appreciate everything you're doing here. Keep up these great reviews, and we got to have you back to do the Heiko one next.
Sure. Yeah, looking forward to that one for sure.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, that is a wrap. I hope everybody has a happy Easter. You guys have a great time tomorrow. Enjoy friends and family and great food if you can. And until next time, my friends,